A man in a Porsche refused to help a homeless woman, but when she shouted out his mother's name, he was stunned. The day began with a sunny morning that gave no hint of the coming storm. The sky over the city was clear, and only a gentle breeze rustled the leaves on the trees along the wide avenues. Michael Stevenson, the director of a thriving consulting firm, sat in his spacious office with panoramic windows overlooking the bustling streets of New York. Today was supposed to be another step toward the successful completion of a quarter filled with achievements. However, the morning turned out to be anything but ordinary. An unexpected message from the security service made his heart skip a beat. A notification flashed on his phone, unauthorized access attempt detected on company documents. All thoughts of the upcoming meeting vanished. It felt like a cold shower, abruptly pulling him back to reality after a calm night. The next few hours, Michael spent unraveling what had happened. The cleaning lady, Mary, who had been with the company for over 3 years and was trusted without reservation, was caught stealing trade secrets. It was a real blow. Mary was not just an employee, she was part of the larger corporate family. Many, including Michael, had shared personal experiences with her, met her outside of work at corporate events, and considered her, like he did, a mother figure, a nanny, a friend. She could have just come and asked for help, he said to his deputy, James, who was trying to console him. 3 years of trust, and this is what you get in return, he continued, unable to hide his disappointment. James was more pragmatic in his assessment. The important thing is that the situation is under control, and no one else was harmed. But yes, it's a lesson for all of us, he said, trying to find the right words of support. Michael felt that every mention of Mary was like a knife cutting into his soul. He remembered how she baked pies for her birthday, pies that reminded him so much of his childhood and his mother's pies. With these thoughts, Michael suddenly felt betrayed. This inner conflict led him to decide to leave early to cool down and collect his thoughts. Yes, it's confirmed, it was really her, he said into the phone as he was already getting into his Porsche. He was talking to his wife, trying to explain the inexplicable. I built this team like a family, and what came of it? We were trusted, and this is the result. On this day, filled with reflections and heavy emotions, Michael had no idea what lay ahead. He couldn't have imagined that fate was already preparing a meeting for him that would drastically change his life. Michael Stevenson closed the door to his office, shutting himself off from the restless world of corporate floors. Left alone, he walked to the window overlooking the alluring lights of New York. The city lived its life, unaware of the storm that had erupted in the soul of one man. Tears welled up in his eyes, unexpected and bitter, like the betrayal he had so recently experienced. The thought of Mary, the cleaning lady who had crossed all possible lines of trust, tormented him. How could a woman he had trusted implicitly betray him so easily? Michael was in unbearable pain at the thought that the betrayer had been so close, one of those he considered almost family. 3 years. He repeated to himself, as if trying to find an answer in those words. 3 years of smiles, conversations about children, discussions of weekend plans, even recipes for those very pies she baked for every corporate event. Michael couldn't believe it had all been just a mask, hiding a selfish goal. Now, standing by the window, he suddenly realized that his anger was mixed with pain, the pain of loss. The loss not just of an employee, but of a person who had been a part of his world. Michael reflected on how often he had trusted without hesitation, basing his judgments on personal impressions rather than cold calculations. He understood that business required toughness, but his nature always leaned towards creating warm, almost familial relationships within the team. But was it worth such a high price now? Michael's thoughts were interrupted by a phone call. His wife's name, Laura, lit up on the smartphone screen. He struggled to shift his focus to the conversation with her. Laura knew him better than anyone and immediately sensed something was wrong. "Honey, are you okay? You sound strange," she asked with concern in her voice. "Yes, I'm fine, just tired," Michael replied reluctantly, trying to convince not only her but himself as well. "You always say that when something is wrong." Remember, I'm here for you, she gently reminded him. His heart tightened with gratitude for her support, but also with the realization that Mary's betrayal had struck him deeper than he thought. It made him question his leadership principles, his methods of building relationships with people. Maybe I really trusted people too much, he pondered. But without trust, there can be no true leadership. There can be no team willing to follow you through all the trials. That night, Michael didn't find answers to his questions. He spent hours staring at the sleeping city, where every light in the windows reminded him that life goes on despite betrayals and disappointments. And tomorrow he would have to return to work and look into the eyes of those who remained loyal to him. To find the strength to forgive and move on, maintaining faith in people despite everything. He stood alone in the elevator, slowly descending to the first floor. Around him was silence, broken only by the monotonous hum of the motor. Conversations from the day, the echo of betrayal that had thundered in his life like a bolt from the blue, still echoed in his mind. As he exited the building, Michael slowly walked to his car, parked in the shadow of towering skyscrapers. The cool evening air felt especially refreshing after the stuffy office. He got into the car but didn't start the engine right away. Instead, he rested his head on the steering wheel, allowing himself a moment to feel the full weight of the fatigue and disappointment that had accumulated over the past hours. The decision to leave work earlier than usual was unusual for Michael, who always valued discipline and responsibility to his team. But today, he felt that he couldn't pretend that everything was okay. Not today, when his heart was so full of pain and doubts. On the drive home, Michael let his thoughts jump randomly from one memory to another. He remembered how on Mary's first day at work, she had brought him a cup of coffee just the way he liked it, without sugar and with 2 drops of milk. How she smiled at him, saying she remembered how everyone in the office preferred their coffee. These were small things, but they were the ones that created an atmosphere of trust and comfort. Today, however, these same memories seemed like something else, from another life. Arriving home, Michael slowly got out of the car. He stood for a few minutes at the front door, taking deep breaths of the cold air. Inside, his wife was waiting for him, and she would undoubtedly sense his unease and try to help. He knew the upcoming conversation would be difficult. Laura had always known how to support him, but today, Michael realized he needed it more than ever. When he entered, Laura was already waiting for him in the living room. She looked at him with concern, seeing the shadows of fatigue and stress on his face. "You're home early," she said softly, approaching him and embracing him. Michael hugged her back, feeling the tension begin to leave his body. He sank onto the couch, and they sat down together. Words weren't necessary, their presence alone spoke volumes. But he knew he would soon have to explain everything. "I don't know what to do, Laura," he began, his voice trembling with uncertainty. "How do I rebuild the trust that was lost? How do I start believing in people again?" Laura listened, nodding and occasionally squeezing his hand. Her eyes were full of empathy and understanding. "We'll find the answers together, Mike," she said quietly. "We always do." In that moment, Michael realized that despite all the losses and trials, he wasn't alone. With her support, he could get through anything, restoring what was lost, step by step. After the conversation with Laura, Michael Stevenson decided he needed a distraction. He got into his Porsche and headed to one of the city's shopping malls, intending to pick out a gift for his wife. The evening chill pleasantly enveloped him after the day's hustle and stress. The city lights, flickering through the glass, created the illusion of a starry sky, which soothed him a bit. Michael parked his Porsche in the spacious lot of the shopping mall and headed towards the entrance. His steps were heavy, but the determination to find something special for Laura gave him strength. He walked through the brightly lit corridors, stopping at jewelry store windows, until he chose a delicate silver necklace with a sapphire, Laura's favorite stone. As he was leaving the mall, pleased with his choice and a few other purchases, his gaze fell on an elderly woman sitting by the entrance. She was dressed in worn-out clothes, and her face bore a mask of fatigue and need. Michael slowed his pace. "Young man, could you spare some change for bread?" she asked quietly, looking up at him. The man looked the woman up and down. There was something almost comical about